Hey everyone, welcome to Princess Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to The Legend of Vox Machina, Season 2, Episode 5. Um, so I think this puts us about halfway through the season, if not exactly halfway through. I think there's like 10 episodes, I don't know. But either way, so last time we had the stuff with the Matron of Ravens and Vax making a deal to save Vex and everything. Um, yeah, just basically the aftermath of everything, how Vex is still alive, all of that jazz. Vax was basically like, "Take me instead," and Matron of Ravens is like, "Okay, but he's not dead." Instead, he's kind of become like her peon, for lack of a better word. It seems. Gonna be interesting to see where this goes. Um, and there was like, let me see if I can bring this up real quick. Last time and everything, and just in general, there was some discussion, we'll say, regarding my thoughts on characters, especially notably Vex. A lot of people, and this is completely valid. It seems like others were saying, and I saw, I apparently, I saw this, I guess, in some other places too, I guess, but it seems like there's some people like saying, and I'm not going to out anyone. I'm not going to like reveal who you are or whatnot, unless you want to say in the comments. That's up to you. But um, basically going on about how like Vex is not as bad as like I kind of view her and everything. And I think this was done in like the past couple episodes that I reacted to. Something was. Let me see if I can find it. Um, bu- 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 Trying to see if I can find it here. Um, I'm not seeing it specifically. I don't remember exactly who mentioned it, but again, I'm not going to out them on here anyway. But someone mentioned basically, like, for an example, that Percy was kind of an asshole in season one and everything. It's like, okay, yes, but Percy was also possessed by a spirit of vengeance. Like, he was literally demon possessed, and the only asshole stuff that he did outside of that influence was literally because of years of torture and betrayal that he went through. His entire family, pretty much, besides his sister, which he didn't know at first, being horrifically murdered in front of him. It's just like, let's be honest here. Percy had a lot more of a reason to be aggro, for lack of a better way to put it, I guess. Or a lack of a better way that I can think of at the moment. He had a much better reason. Like, I'm not saying that what Vex went through isn't valid. I'm not saying that what she and her brother went through wasn't bad and terrible. But and maybe a lot of things are explained better in the actual campaign. But I can only judge this based on what I have here. I want to make that clear. I can only judge the character based on the knowledge that I have, and that is within the realm of this series. I don't have the knowledge from the campaign, and honestly, the knowledge from the campaign doesn't really matter to the series. They are separate pieces of media. This is an adaptation of the original source. it's its own piece of media and needs to be able to stand on its own. Therefore, the characters have to be judged based on their separate portrayals. Vex in the campaign may not be as much of an asshole, but in this series, she is. And honestly, most of the time for no real reason. And especially with the people she's an asshole towards most of the time, like Keyleth specifically. Like, it's not just a case of like I'm viewing her actions and words too harshly. It's the case of this is how she's acting. Again, if she's different in the campaign, and those of you who might have seen the campaign and everything understand that and all, that's fine. But that doesn't change how she is here. That doesn't affect how she is here in the series. They're two separate tellings of the same story. But they are separate tellings. And that has to be taken into account. You could view it like a multiverse kind of thing. Like, this is a separate universe version of the campaign version. And again, from what we have here, it's like, yeah, it's very different. Oh, I found it. I found it, by the way. So again, I'm not gonna tell who they are. If they want to come forward about that, they can. But they said here, in the first season, Percy was a kind of a dick, and I seem to be okay. Speaking about me, I seem to be okay, backing him up immediately, even when he made Keyleth cry by yelling at her. Again, different circumstance. Percy in the first season was literally possessed by a demon of vengeance. And it was very clear that something was wrong from very early on in the series. So yeah, when he went overboard, it was very clearly he was not all right in the head. And also, again, from what we've been told, his backstory is honestly much worse than Vex and Vax's. Let's be completely honest here. The shit he went through is a lot worse than what Vex and Vax did. Like, they also mentioned here that they're kind of sad that Vex was made less charismatic in the show versus the campaign, but is still likable to some degree. Again, I can't judge based on where the campaign is at. I can only judge based on where the series is and what that shows. I honestly don't think she's likable pretty much at all in this series. I think she's really the only unlikable character here. And keep in mind, I want to make it clear, if you have differing opinions than me, that's completely fine. It is not, as you put there, it is not aggressive or rude to bring those opinions up. As long as you're not aggressive or rude about it. As long as you are just either informing me about how it is in the campaign or sharing your opinion. As long as you're not aggressive or rude, you're fine. And you haven't been, so sharing your opinion is fine. I'm very fine with you disagreeing with me. It's all subjective anyway. I'm just sharing my opinion from my perspective. So yeah, it's very clearly different perspectives here on this all. And the thing is, I can very much handle asshole characters in a lot of shows and stuff. I can very much like accept a lot of shows, a lot of media having characters like that. But there's a point where it's like if you're supposed to be one of the good guys, one of the main heroes, and you're acting like that all the time, especially towards your own allies, it gets to a point where it can just be completely unenjoyable to watch for me. Like, it's not like something like Death Note where the main character is the bad guy instead of the good guy. It's not like that. It's trying to think of an example that would be even slightly similar. Um, I guess based off of what I watched of it, I guess I could compare it to Rick and Morty, where it's just like, oh yeah, this character, Rick. Speaking of Rick, is just a complete fucking asshole. He's one of the worst people you could imagine, and we're supposed to be enjoying watching him. We're supposed to be on his side. And if you're not supposed to be on his side, the series, at least for the, I don't know, 6 or so episodes I watched, did not get that across very well. Because it very much, like, was implying that you're supposed to like and laugh along with him and enjoy his adventures and everything with Morty. It's like, again, I don't know where this series goes exactly because I dropped Rick and Morty, like, really early, I guess you could say, like, again, like 6 episodes or so in. But it's like completely unlikable character, and that really turned me off of the show. Um, it's one of the things that turned me off of the show, but uh, it's kind of the same deal here. Vex is one of the main characters, and she's completely, in my opinion, unlikable. She's the only member of the party who is like that. Because even when Percy was at his worst in season one, he still showed signs that he was not in control of this, and he showed a lot of moments where he was good, where he was nice, where he was understanding. Hell, in like what was it, episode 4? I want to say it is of season one. He's the one who encourages and you know talks helpfully towards Keyleth that allows her to use the light spell to banish, or not really banish, but um, to defeat in the end the the whites. Like, she would not have been able to use that light spell if not for his encouragement. Like, yeah, Percy showed bad shit in season one too, but again, he had a reason. Vex's past, and I've said this before with various shows and whatnot, but just having a tragic background is not a reason to be an asshole. I've said this in like Jujutsu Kaisen with Mai as well. Having a tragic backstory, having gone through a lot of stuff, is not an excuse to be an asshole. You are in control of your own emotions. You are in control of your own, um, of your own. Why is my mind blanking on the word? You're in control of yourself. Let's put it that way. Um, the point with Percy is he literally wasn't. He was literally being controlled, and he was literally being influenced actively by this demon beyond his control. He chose to accept that at first, but yeah, it's like that's not the same at all as with Vex. And I'm sorry for going on this long rant about all of this, but I want to make this clear because, again, these comments have been coming in, and I've seen other people talk about it in other videos and whatnot. Um, and it's just, it comes down to, like, I just don't like her, and I'm allowed to not like her. If you like her, if you find more of anything redeemable about her, that's completely fine. I don't. Now, that could change. Maybe she'll become more likable after this death experience. Maybe she will. Hopefully, she will. But I'm just saying. I also want to mention real quick before we get started. I've really noticed this lately, but I'm just not enjoying season 2 like I was with season 1. Season one's arc with the Derulo family and the um, Silas, the vampire, and his wife. They were much more interesting than what's going on now. I'm sorry that my mind is blanking on on like his last name right now, him and his wife's last name. But yeah, that was a lot more fun, a lot more interesting. And I thought at the start this season would be a lot like that, but instead, like the dragon stuff, pretty much forgotten about for now. I mean, it's like kind of the main motivating factor for them, but everything that they're actually doing is just not as interesting. I kind of wish like there was more like focus on the dragons, honestly, but we've gotten I feel like just unfortunately too little actual focus on them. Maybe that'll change. Maybe things will get better, but yeah, it's just this season definitely has not been as interesting and good as season 1 was for me. And again, all subjective, all opinion. If you disagree, that's fine. Um, we'll see where it goes. Let's just continue on for now. Sorry for these long pre-thoughts. Let's get this going. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black, then it fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. Okay, and we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I looked it up. Yeah, Janet Varney, her character here, is Keelat's mom. So that's pretty cool. Because like I mentioned, I know Janet Varney from Legend of Korra. It's like in here her character's name is Vilya. Yeah, it's like Legend of Korra, for those who don't know, is one of my favorite shows of all time. So that's saying something. So I went back and listened to it, and it's like you can kind of tell, like you can kind of hear this, you can kind of hear Korra's voice in there, but the performance is so notably different at the same time that it's like it's also different enough. I didn't go back and listen to the Ashari girl for Amy Carrero though. Honestly, she didn't have a lot of lines, so I might not be able to recognize her as much. Um, but yeah, also Sarah Konos was Robbie Damon. That's fun as well. And Fred Tatasciore was Keelat's dad, Corin. Yeah, just really fun little additional cast members thrown in here. Um, but let's talk about the episode as a whole. I'm gonna get this out of the way first because it's why the pre thoughts were so long. Um, Vex is confusing me in this episode because there's points where she's like flaunting the entire, oh, I've matured, I've grown, I've become a better person. She's constantly flaunting that in the episode. But then there's a few small points where it actually seems like she might have like legitimately changed a little bit. Like the fact that where like Keyleth flies off to go help the fire Ashari and everything, and she's Vax is like upset because he's like, we have bigger things to do, and Vex is like, we should probably go help her. It's like she would, that's what she would do and everything. It's like she's like, Vex before her death would not have done that, would not have said that. She would have been the one complaining, while Vax would have been the one campaigning to, you know, follow after. It's kind of like their personalities almost switched. Not completely. We do see a lot of Vax's niceness in this episode too, especially towards the end. But we see that he's gotten a lot more edgy, a lot more you know, upset at just everything going on around him because of his deal with the Matron of Ravens and everything, and the fact that he can't get his armor off. It's like, yeah, it's kind of understandable. Like his that's the thing. His reactions towards this are understandable for what's going on, but he's also in the wrong for not wanting to help. Like, both can be true. The thing is, he's nowhere near as much of an asshole as Vex was before. It's not even close to being comparable here. Now, Vex in this episode, like I said, there are a couple points where she starts to get seemingly more, like, actually nice. Where she's actually starting to seem like she's actually trying to be, you know, changed. But the fact that she flaunts this constantly through the episode kind of makes me think that it's all an act. It doesn't feel genuine, even when there are those moments that are supposed to feel genuine. And it leaves me at this weird point with her, because it's like, I'm open to her changing. I'm open to her genuinely turning over a new leaf and becoming a better person. But I kind of don't believe it here. With the way it's being presented, with the way it's being shown, with her constantly flaunting it like she is. Like, I've grown so much more mature. I'm the mature one now. You can trust me. It's shit like that. It's like, how can you take that seriously? How can you believe that? It just comes across as disingenuous. And so it's like, even those moments that are supposed to come across as more genuinely kind and thoughtful and whatnot, it's hard to believe in them. It just is. So I'm very conflicted on her right now, because it seems like they're almost trying to make her be nicer, but also not. And it's, I don't know what to think. I guess we'll just have to continue to see where it goes. So this episode is obviously very Keyleth focused. It focuses on showcasing her family for the first time, and showing, and it goes more into detail, I feel, about what her Aramente is actually about. Because unless I'm just forgetting, which admittedly is possible, unless I'm just forgetting, it didn't actually go into detail about her Aramente before, did it? It just mentioned she had to achieve mastery or something before, but it didn't like go into detail on what that meant, I believe. Here we find out she basically has to master the elements. She has to master each element to achieve her Aramente. She's already a natural air Ashari. Basically, it's an avatar thing. Like, going back to Legend of Korra, this is a fucking avatar thing. Like, she is an air Ashari. She has to master the elements, and it's like, come on, this is fucking Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I'm not saying that is a bad thing, by the way. I'm just saying it's very much the same kind of thing, except she's not. Well, I mean, she kind of is able to master all of them, but still. So, yeah, during the Aramente, she has to master all the different elements, and Here is where we see her mastering the element of fire. We get to see that throughout the course of this episode, and see how this has been like set in motion for her through seeing the flashback with her parents, getting to meet her father in the current day, getting to see the fire Ashari and everything. We actually get information, and we get some notable focus on this that delves into this a lot more and allows us to understand it. Obviously, in the campaign itself, they go into a lot more detail. Of course they do, because it's a D&D campaign. They go into a lot. I'm sure. I think it's pretty much guaranteed they go into a lot more detail in the campaign, even before this point. But I like that they're finally telling us more about it, and we actually see fruition come from it. And now she just has to master water and earth. So cool. um, that's really interesting to see this really brought to a head, and also seeing Keyleth struggle with her fears, her feelings of inadequacy, her views on herself and everything is a major part of this episode. Her going through the portal into the fire plane and accepting the fire and becoming one with it is all showcasing as well her own inner struggles and coming to become a lot more confident in herself, because that's always been her biggest struggle, her self-confidence or lack thereof. So gaining that confidence here is a big deal for her and feels earned. We also see Alora and Kima here, and we find out how they and the council survived through Alora's magic, which I kind of figured they did. It's like they seem too important to go. Like, it's one thing to have, you know, the king or whatever his exact position was called again, to have him die. That's one thing, even though he, you know, gave up his position. But still. It's one thing to have him go, but you're not going to get rid of the entire council like that. That's just not going to happen. So Alora and Kima are here, and we find out they're actually a couple. Like, to the best of my knowledge, that was never expressed before. And it's just done in a very subtle, natural way here. They're just fighting together, and then later on, once the fight's over, Alora's like, I gotta get this one back, and she, like, gently rubs her cheek, and then they kiss. It's very subtly handled, and I think that's the best way to handle that. In a series inspired by D&D, which is, let's be honest, super gay as it is, where you have a character who is like extremely pansexual, and is willing to have sex with literally everyone and openly admits this. It's honestly a little surprising we haven't had more queer representation more consistently. So seeing this for Alora and Kima and seeing how it's handled so naturally is great, because it's not made a big deal out of. Unlike with Scanlan, who shouts about his sexual lusts from the rooftops, this is handled very subtly. It's a good contrast in that regard. And I just like the fact as well that no one makes a deal out of it. It's not like made a big deal out of, like, no one even says like, oh, you two are together. No one says that. It's just accepted. It's just naturalized. And that's, I feel, the best way to handle that. There was no reason to make a big deal out of it. It works better this way. It just does. um, so I love how how this went down. I really think that that was an example of really good representation there. Now, the action in this was really great. There was some great moments of animation, like when Keyleth was accepting the fire and everything. A lot of wonderful voice acting performances from some of the new characters and all. Honestly, I think this was the best episode of season 2 so far by a long shot. Like it's not even close. And one of the best of the series. This feels more like what got me interested in this series. This feels like more of the stuff that I wanted to see from this season, but haven't been getting. This feels like the Vox Machina that you could say I fell in love with at the beginning of season 1 and going into the stuff with the vampire and all. That entire arc. So this feels more like season 1 Vox Machina than anything else did in this season. Episodes 1 through 4 felt very different. And again, not necessarily bad, just not as good and not really what I liked about the series. It was starting to fade a lot for me, and I'll be honest, I was considering taking a break from this series. Like I was actually considering if this episode didn't impress me enough, I was going to take a break from this series before going into the second half. Or mostly second half, because there's 12 episodes. um, but this episode kind of turned that around for me. This episode did really well for me in that regard. Now, I mean, anything can change. Maybe next episode will go right back down to what I wasn't liking so far about season 2, and maybe I will take a break. But next episode's the basically last chance for that, because I don't think I'm going to take a break with less than half the episodes left. Outside of just not reacting to it for a couple weeks or whatnot, because just because I wouldn't be feeling up to it. That's just a normal part of how this channel works. Having no schedule and all. Getting to things when I want to get to them. But yeah, this episode, at least, hopefully, this episode has saved this season for me. Because this season was starting to look a little dour in my eyes. Dour's the wrong word. I know it's the wrong word. It was starting to look a little weak in my eyes. It just wasn't working as well as season 1 did. It's like, again, the lack of focus on the dragons as well, which we got in this episode. We got a little bit of the dragons in this episode. We saw Umbrasyl at the end of the episode, talking with what looked like Grog's people, and then the fucking bitch from season 1 shows up, and she's just doing evil shit again. It's like, the fuck, lady. After what happened in season 1, you think this is the right move? You're gonna make deals with dragons? The fuck? So are we gonna be meeting more of Grog's people and find out more about that? Because there's also set up in this episode with Grog. He's talking to the sword that he, got from Silas. And it just keeps begging him for more blood and everything, and it even at one point turns itself towards Pike. At which point, like Grog looks surprised, but I'm thinking like, oh, you better not fucking go there. If this thing tries to possess Grog into hurting Pike, I am going to rage. Like I will rage at that. Because that's not okay. That's not okay. And if that leads into like maybe even something with Grog's people being introduced and everything, that would be interesting. But there's like 7 episodes left, so it's like we can't like go through everything and still get to taking on the Chroma Conclave or anything in this season if we're going to, you know, how do I put it? We can't do all of these little side quests if we're going to get to all of the main stuff this season as well. Let me look up something real quick. I want to look up something here. Okay, so there is a third season coming. Yeah, that's what I thought. I don't. I was second guessing myself there. There is a third season coming for Vox Machina, so it's possible that this plot line might not be concluded in this season. But that would seem like a really weird thing to do, wouldn't it? To have like an entire arc, an entire plot line, like span between two different seasons. Like that's not normal. That's not like a natural thing for anime or cartoons to do. That would be a very interesting turn, though, if this wasn't like concluded in that time. But I'm kind of thinking it might not be able to be. At least if we're going to cover all this other stuff as well. And I assume season 3 of this is going to come out before Mighty Nine does. I don't know if Mighty Nine is in the same universe at all. I know nothing about that at all. And do not tell me. No spoilers. Do not tell me whether it is or not, even. But I assume that Vox Machina Season 3 is still going to air before that. Both were announced, I believe, this year. And I assume they would want to finish out one series before starting the new one. But I mean, I guess I don't know for sure. um, I'm definitely interested, though, to see Mighty Nine when it comes out. But again, like we'll tackle that when we get to that. For now, though, like I said, do not spoil me. Do not even tell me if I'm right or wrong about whether or not it takes place before or after, or even in the same universe as Vox Machina. Just do not tell me. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode of Vox Machina. Also, don't spoil anything that isn't revealed in the series either. Like, you could talk about stuff that's like from this series that was mentioned in the campaign and everything, or say like how it was like expanded upon in the campaign. But if it hasn't been talked about in the campaign or in the series, don't mention it, please, because that counts as spoiler to me. Because that might be mentioned in the future of the series, for all I know. And while it might have been mentioned before this point in the campaign, if it's not mentioned in the series by this point, I consider it a spoiler because it's something I don't know about. I'm just saying this because someone did mention something in the comments about Vex and Vax's backstory that was not mentioned in the series. At least to the best of my knowledge, it wasn't. And it caught me entirely off guard, and it's like, I count that as a spoiler. So, even if it was mentioned by this point in the campaign, if it wasn't mentioned by this point in the series, please do not spoil it for me. But all of that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. And like I said, let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments below. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.